Okay, good evening, everybody. It's good to see everybody back in person again. I'd like to call to order the June 16th, 2020 Board of Education meeting at 7:06 p.m. Sarah, can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Delafield.
Here.
Mr. Berardi.
Here.
Mr. Bianca.
Here.
Mr. Ludston.
Here.
Mr. Mazzano.
Here.
Mr. Palazzo.
Here.
Mr. Tribuzio.
Here. Thank you, Sarah. Quorum has been established. Please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Berardi, read the mission statement.
Sure. The mission of North School District 80 is inspiring educational excellence in a nurturing environment.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to an action item. Some discussion before I ask for a motion. I'd like you to turn your attention to, under consent agenda, line item G, as in George. I've been told right before the meeting here that we no longer have to have that on the agenda for tonight. So I'm going to ask for that to be removed. If there's no other discussion,
I would. Which is
under consent, G reads, motion to approve the hiring of Nicole Peterson, third grade special ed teacher, Leigh School at Lane 3 Step 5.
Now,
That needs to be removed.
I'd like to remove 19B.
Well, that'll be after. We can do that when we get to the action item.
Okay.
But for right now, inside consent. You'll have the opportunity to do that, but when we get to it individually later. Can I ask a question from anybody?
I'm more happy to say that.
She affirmed that she accepted that.
Okay, that's a good answer for that one, but why, no, that's fine, why the consent agenda is after closed session?
Because it's modifying the consent. So it's modifying the agenda as presented.
Yeah, just remove that, Mike. You don't need
It's
to-
just a removal of an item.
In case you have any questions that we need to answer during close.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good.
Somebody's paying attention, or at least I.
All right.
Somebody knows
So
what
then
I'm
I need a
talking
motion to approve the agenda as not modified.
I'm watching.
Motion by Tim, second by Pasquale. Sarah, can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Ludston.
Yes.
Mr. Bianca.
Yes.
Mr. Tribuzio.
Yes.
Mr. Palazzo.
Yes.
Mr. Delafield.
Yes.
Mr. Berardi.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion is carried. Recognizing visitors. Due to us following the state guidelines, we're at a max 10 today. So we are following phase 3 of the Illinois guidelines. Correspondence, there is no correspondence. Public participation, any emails come in that we don't know about, questions, comments for the board. There is no public participation. FOIA request. The district received 3 FOIA requests. On the advice of legal counsel, like I said last meeting, moving forward, we're going to say who put the request in, the date that it came in, and the context of it. The reason I'm not going to go into detail tonight is because on the advice of counsel, it's going to be on the agenda moving forward. So with that being said, in general, the district received 3 FOIA requests. On to our-
Are we going to post on the FOIA, are we required to post that on the site for the FOIA that it will be stated?
That's a great question. It can be posted on the site. I will get some clarification if we have to put somewhat of a disclaimer that it has to be, that you have to know about it. I will ask that. Okay? So, but it will eventually go on our website. That is legally due. Presentation. Ms. Palmer, you're first.
Actually, Principal Guzik and I are going to present to you several items that are going to be, we're asking for the board's approval on several of these things, but this first one actually is of high interest to our community. And this is the reopening of schools for the fall. We had an opportunity to listen attentively to all of the guidance put out by the Illinois Department of Public Health, the CDC, of course, and the governor's office, and we're monitoring that on a daily basis. But we were quickly coming to the end of school, and so we decided to take our building leadership teams and our building student support teams and bring together those teachers And this is pretty much standard in the state of Illinois, that districts are preparing for 3 different possibilities. And we would like to review those with you tonight to let you know where we're at in this planning and what we know so far. So this presentation is not followed by any action, but it is something that you need to know so that when the governor's office puts forth and the Illinois Department of Public Health and NSD put forth their guidance, you will know that we're ready and what we've been thinking to keep our kids safe as we move into the fall. So the first thing that we did, and we talked about this at a previous board meeting, we did a parent survey. And I need to tell you, this parent survey was probably second only to our foreign language parent survey that happened quite a few years ago now. We had 316 respondents. That is absolutely it blew us away. And we kept getting feedback from parents. So I would say this represents a majority of our families, and it definitely had a lot of people. Interesting, most of our second grade parents. So for whatever reason, the second graders get an A for responding. 82 of how many? 108 second graders, their parents responded. And then you can see it was pretty much equally popular across the grade levels. We actually found it interesting that 35 parents of 8th graders still decided to reply, considering they were leaving us, but maybe they had other students in the district. We had teachers and administration make up the questions. The first question we asked was, during e-learning, was there someone at home who could help you with your lessons? And I will let Michelle tell you about that.
The majority of people answered yes, that there is someone at home. There were 2 different categories. Someone's at home, and then the second one, that's the larger amount, that's the red amount, is someone is home, but they still require some assistance. So over 70, almost 80% of people, yes, someone was home. Which we know, many people were home from the shutdown.
We asked, have you, as parents, been satisfied with the amount of time that your student has dedicated to e-learning? And an overwhelming majority, 64%, said yes, it was the right amount of time for e-learning. And then secondarily was that 17%, no, it was too much time, which in my mind was okay too on some level. They had more learning than they expected. 18% said they dedicated too little time. They would have actually preferred to have a little more work to do. But an overwhelming majority said yes, it was the right amount of time. That's what they expected.
The next one talks about the communication with e-learning activities, including how to access them and the directions for assignments. And again, we came out with 75.6% that felt yes, that they were comfortable with the communication. It was just the right amount of communication. The red, and somewhat, maybe they could have had some more. Maybe Superintendent Palmer could have written a few more emails or funniness, but then just a small percent didn't even show up on there, said no.
So really positive about the communication.
Have you been satisfied with your child's ability to connect with teachers? Overwhelming, almost 81% said yes.
And then most of the other people said somewhat happy with the ability to connect with your teachers. So our teachers were connecting and communicating. So then we pivoted and asked them, as we prepare for next school year, we need to have a plan that we lovingly refer to as e-learning 2.0. If we were to need to have an e-learning experience for students, what does that look like? So the first question we asked is, would it be important to you to have live whole class meetings or lessons with teachers at the same time each day? So your child has a Zoom meeting or Google Hangout meet at 9 a.m. for math every day of the year. And this, we did a number, it's a Likert scale. 5 is very important, 4 is somewhat important, 3 is sort of neutral, 2 and 1 is not so important. So a large number of our parents want live instruction and whole class live instruction. So we also asked,
how about live small group instruction of the teachers? We did have a couple of teachers here that did do some small little groups, and so we asked, how do you feel about that? And again, in that scale, we had most people that wanted that, the live instruction, small groups.
we also asked, would you like to have your assignments all preloaded at the beginning of a week? So you know what work you have to do all week long, say for math or ELA, and then be able to do that whenever. Well, they also wanted that. So they want their cake and they want to eat it too, right? So they want to know what work is ahead of us this week, and they would like to see live instruction.
And then we asked about virtual office hours for the students. And again, yes, this was very important, so that the teachers are accessible. You can say that where the teachers are from this time to this time. Yes, they want this as well.
And this was something that I know a lot of the Giles teachers offered, but not a lot of kids took them up on it. I think they offered it more to the students of the junior high rather than the parents. So we did ask the parents, would they like to have virtual office hours, and that seemed popular.
They do.
Yeah. So we have been preparing for reopening in the fall using 3 different plans. And I'm not a betting woman. Michelle likes Vegas. I go to Vegas for the pools and the shows, but if I had to lay money, my guess is that we will be using all of these plans next school year at some point. So the first one is, of course, in-person live instruction. And because Illinois seems to be going in the direction of phase 4, we believe then you could have groups of 50 or fewer. So therefore, Michelle and I can have school. We can open school. Students can come into school, they can be in a room with 25 other peers, have a teacher in there, and be perfectly fine. We're not going to have the opening year assembly, we're not going to have 250 kids in the lunchroom at a time, but we could have in-person school with every kid every day. This is our preferred option, of course.
So we would take some safety precautions, like
Correct.
checking temperatures, and the students would have PPE, and the teachers would have PPE.
Right.
But we would like the students back.
Yes. At the junior high, this looks like all of the students staying in their homeroom and the teachers rotating. So we would create classrooms where your child at the junior high would sit in one desk. Every class would be brought to them. So their ELA class would be brought to them, their math class, and we would have a rotation. We would work out details depending on the guidance from the state as far as whether or not students could go to PE or whether they would have to stay in their room for PE. Could they go out to recess, or would they have to, stay in their classroom group for recess? What that looks like is kind of like a Leigh model where they have structured play in the afternoon. So, teachers would take their classes out, 25 kids, play, come back. So we still would have recess, it just would look very, very different.
And Leigh would look the same as Giles, where the teacher would rotate through the classroom.
Right. The second plan is some kids at school and some at home. We anticipate that some of our parents are not going to be comfortable sending their kids back to school in the fall. even if we're open. We also anticipate there will be times when students need to quarantine, whether they have the COVID-19 virus or someone in their family does and they need to quarantine. They would stay home and learn from home. So we need an option that provides that live instruction while students are having that going on. That involves giving permission. So all of the parents of students at school would have to give permission for us to live stream the classroom out to the students at home.
And at Leigh, we would only be looking at one of those classrooms per grade level, not the whole entire tool live streaming out, but one first grade classroom, one second grade classroom.
And we would stream one classroom here at Giles, so one particular section would be that streaming experience. So we only need to get permission slips from about 25 parents for each grade level. And then there's e-learning 2.0. So if we were to have to close down school for cleaning, or if we were to be ordered by the governor again to shut down, we would go home and have e-learning 2.0, more live instruction, synchronous connection to teachers, meaning at the same time, and all students would have these one-to-one Chromebooks because of the CARES Act money that you allocated for all students to have a one-to-one Chromebook next year. So we have been in conversation with the Teachers Association about what are the expectations for e-learning 2.0. And some of the basic tenets that we've all been talking about include 3 hours of live instruction at home. So it may not be a big 3-hour chunk, it may be 3 separate time slots throughout the day, depending on the learners and depending on their needs. It may not be 3 hours of whole class, it may be for some learners small group, but each child would have access to 3 hours of live instruction for their needs. Mandatory logins for students and attendance taken, recorded instruction and list of work. So that live instruction would also be recorded for students who might need it at a different time, asynchronous, and that list of work at the beginning of the week, just like our survey indicated. And then we would try with remote e-learning 2.0 to better replicate the student's schedule from the school year, because we want these 3 plans to be flexible. We want to be able to smoothly flow from in-person instruction to some kids at home to e-learning and back if we need to. So we don't want to do what we did this year, which was to slim down our curriculum and instruction to the mandatory minimums. We want to keep those enriching elective kinds of experiences going. So these,
Yeah, we're talking about being in person, things that we've been thinking about are limiting the students, keeping them in one classroom, having them in that one desk all day, and then, of course, having them 6 feet apart. As much as possible, a lot of hand washing, a lot of sanitizer, a lot of masks.
we've purchased a Clorox 360 machine for each campus, and we anticipate using them on multi-touch surfaces in common areas throughout the day, as well as doing far more sanitizing in the classroom. And like we said, taking students' temperatures, so we're looking at purchasing a lot of forehead thermometers to make sure that our students are fever-free while on campus. We also have some in-person considerations for Leigh.
So we would have the art teacher, the music teacher, all the special teachers would go to the classroom instead of the students wandering through the building, so that we can cut down on our exposure, and we'd still be able to run everything. I think we'd even be able to run PE, but it would look different in the classroom, and in some ways would probably be, sitting at a desk PE, which I know is not the same, but it still would be an experience of something for the students. And we would also not be in the lunchroom as much.
Right. Not
Maybe have lunch in our classroom.
Right. But there's still many decision points in any of these models, and especially when we're in person. And I want you to be aware of them so that you can start to think about them. Because it may come down to some local decision making. So even though the governor will, allow us to open school and allow all schools to open, there may be some local decisions that we bring to you in the moment. Okay? So for example, we don't know what the governor's guidance, the Illinois Department of Public Health, all these bodies that are going to give us guidance. We still don't know really what they're going to say about what do we do when we find out that someone has COVID-19. Michelle and I are still reeling from the change, okay? Because we went from a time when we couldn't announce anymore. Back when I first started teaching, they used to send out a letter if somebody in my classroom had strep throat or pink eye. We're not allowed to do that anymore. We're not allowed to tell your kid, the families, if a student in class had lice. Right. We're not allowed. Right? So now, we're going to suddenly have to announce to you that someone in your child's homeroom class or one of your child's teachers is now quarantining at home for COVID-19? How's it going to work? I don't know. We're going to wait and see. Will testing be required before they can come back to school? Right? Like, will they have to have a negative test? Will they have to have a positive test? If we simply have somebody with symptoms, but a student shows up at school, they have a fever and they're coughing, they say to me, I can't really smell. Oh honey, we're going to send you home. Now, do we require a COVID test before they can come back to school? I don't know. Can we require it? Can we? Right. And then, if we find out, to what extent do we notify members of the school community when someone tests positive? And when that happens, how many of our parents will keep their kids home? Indicative was the Thursday night, March 12th, when we heard the governor not close school, and yet we kind of decided to do e-learning for a week just to see what was going to happen. Remember that whole decision point? The Thursday evening before, the half day. We had 260 kids out at Leigh, and I don't remember how many at Giles, but it was a giant list of kids. Parents kept their kids home. Why? It was a half day. I get it. But also, we were in this swirl of not knowing, right? I don't know what's going to happen if they suddenly find out that somebody in 5th grade has a positive test for COVID. Maybe they're all going to keep their kids home. Maybe not. I don't know. The other decision point is, how long can we keep students in one desk in one room at the junior level? I mean, don't get me wrong, we're going to have them off doing calisthenics in between subjects, absolutely. And yes, you can do a lot with, in classroom, you're kind of quarantining 25 kids together, basically, right? And they can be doing some activities, but it's still not the same, right? And with all the new sanitation procedures, to what extent will schools be liable for spreading COVID-19? This is a huge issue. The second CARES Act that the Congress is looking at having some hold harmless for schools, now, we always said, how are they going to prove that it happened here, right? If a kid goes home, they stop at Sweet Oasis, they, go to the Walmart, whatever. How are they going to prove they got it here? We always had that defense, but that doesn't mean that somebody's going to sue us. You can always sue, it's whether or not you're going to win, and it still costs us money. So that's a major consideration that schools are worried about. Now, we don't have the issues that all these other districts later on, that I am so glad we don't.
Mr. Ludson?
Yes.
Mr. Tribuzio?
Yes.
Mr. Berardi?
Yes.
Mr. Plaza?
Yes.
Mr. Bianca?
Yes.
Thank you, motion carries. Moving on to action items. Discussion, need a motion to approve the Blue Cross option health insurance plan to replace the PPO 500 plan for all District 80 employees.
I have a motion.
I will second.
Motion made by Ms. Fall, seconded by Ms. Hand. Roll call, please, sir.
Mr. Bianca?
Yes.
Mr. Berardi?
Yes.
Mr. Ludson?
Yes.
Mr. Tribuzio?
Yes.
Mr. Plaza?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, motion carries. Some discussion on the next action item.
Yes, actually, both B, concerning B.
Let's just do, say what B for right
B,
now.
I would suggest we table it. There, we should explore some more about if we can do more comprehensive parking lot repair at the same time. So, I'd like to table it.
Okay, based on that request, we are going to table B boy action item. Moving on to C. Any discussion on C?
Just wanted to touch on something about C. I do think we should proceed with voting on it. I just want to say that we should proceed because these bathrooms have to get fixed. So the vote is to get them fixed. As to exactly who's used, and there's already a number of votes and proposals in place, but and with Patter being gone, a lot of that stuff may not get proceeded with immediately, but there will be a little more exploring with that, but we should get the ball rolling with approving that those bathrooms get fixed.
Okay, any other discussion? Need a motion to approve the Leigh bathroom project.
A second.
Motion made by Frank, seconded by Ms. Fall. Sarah, roll call, please.
Mr. Tribuzio?
Yes.
Mr. Bianca?
Yes.
Mr. Plaza?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano?
Yes.
Mr. Ludson?
Yes.
Mr. Berardi?
Yes.
Thank you, motion carries. Discussion on the next item. I need a motion to approve the painting of the 5th and 6th grade wing ceiling. Any discussion?
Really quick, I just want to say, because it's to remind the board or anybody watching, this is to paint the ceiling of the 5th grade wing at Giles. That is considered a risk. It's a fire hazard, and it's a pretty big item in the life safety study that was done months ago.
And this is based off the quoting that we had at the previous meeting?
Any other discussion? Okay, need a motion to approve the painting.
Motion.
Renzo,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Fall. Roll call, please, Sarah.
Mr. Berardi?
Yes.
Mr. Bianca?
Yes.
Mr. Tribuzio?
Yes.
Mr. Plaza?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano?
Yes.
Mr. Ludson?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, motion carries. Board meeting reflection. And moving on, after reflections to adjourn. I need a motion to adjourn at 12:03 a.m.
I have a motion.
Motion made by Tim, seconded by
Mo
on
second.
the left. Luke, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposed? If so, say nay. Okay, thank you, meeting adjourned.